You have believed something about yourself for so long that it stopped feeling like a belief. It feels like fact. Something so thoroughly woven into the way you understand yourself, the way you move through relationships, the way you respond when something goes wrong, that questioning it has never felt like an option. Not because you are incapable of questioning things, because this particular thing arrived so early, was reinforced so consistently, and was embedded so deeply in the architecture of your self-concept that it became the lens through which you see everything else, including yourself. Carl Jung spent decades sitting with people who were suffering not from what had happened to them, but from what they had come to believe about themselves because of what had happened to them. And what he found consistently in his most sensitive patients, in the ones who felt the world most completely and understood others most precisely and gave the most freely and received the least in return, was this: the beliefs that were costing them the most were the ones they had stopped examining. The ones they had accepted so thoroughly that they were no longer beliefs at all. They were identity. And today I want to take 3 of those beliefs, the 3 Jung identified as most universal and most damaging in the empathic psyche, and do something nobody did for you when you needed it most. Prove to you that they were never true, not as comfort. As evidence, the first belief, that your sensitivity is the reason you suffer. You have been told this so many times in so many ways by so many people that at some point, the external voice became internal. You started telling it to yourself. If you did not feel everything so deeply, you would not be hurt so easily. If you were not so attuned to other people's pain, you would not carry it so completely. If you were simply less perceptive, less present, less achingly aware of everything happening beneath the surface of every interaction, your life would be easier. This belief has a specific cost that most people never calculate. The cost is not just that you feel bad about your sensitivity. The cost is that you spend enormous psychological energy trying to manage the very thing that is most essentially you. Trying to feel less, trying to be less present, trying to dial down an attunement that your nervous system produces as naturally as breathing, and every attempt to manage it, every moment you spend in the exhausting project of being less than what you are, takes energy that was supposed to be available for your actual life. Jung proved something that takes a moment to fully land. He proved that sensitivity is not the variable that determines whether a person suffers. The variable is awareness, specifically self-awareness. He documented extensively that the empaths who suffered least were not the ones who felt less. They were the ones who understood what they were feeling and where it came from and what it belonged to. The suffering does not come from the sensitivity. It comes from the sensitivity operating without the specific psychological skill of knowing whose experience you are having. Without the ability to stand inside the feeling and ask, is this mine? And if it is not mine, who does it belong to and how did it end up here and what do I do with it now? The empath who develops this skill does not become less sensitive. They become sensitive in a way that is finally livable, because for the first time the sensitivity is working for them, not against them. The solution is not to feel less. The solution is to understand more precisely what you are feeling and why. And that understanding, Jung said, is not only possible, it is the most natural development available to a psyche that was built the way yours was built. The second belief, that the reason people leave or pull back or fail to meet you at the depth you are capable of is because there is something fundamentally wrong with you. This one does its damage quietly, not in the loud moments of obvious rejection, in the accumulation of smaller ones, the conversation that went deep on your side and stayed surface on theirs, the relationship where you brought everything, and they brought enough to stay but not enough to truly arrive, the friendship that was warm but always slightly tilted, always slightly more yours than theirs, in a way you felt but could never quite prove. And over time, over years of these accumulations, the empath psyche does what all psyches do when they are trying to make sense of a pattern. It looks for the common denominator, and the common denominator is always you. Jung called this the false attribution of relational failure, the unconscious process by which the empath, whose extraordinary capacity for depth makes them a genuinely rare kind of person to encounter, interprets the consistent inability of others to match that depth as evidence of their own deficiency. As if the problem is not that genuine depth is rare, As if the problem is not that most people have never been required to develop the interior life necessary to meet someone where you are. As if the problem is not structural, relational, about the specific scarcity of people who have done enough interior work to offer what the empath is looking for, but personal, specific to you, a flaw in the empath rather than a fact about the world. Here is what Jung proved. He proved that the empath does not drive people away with their depth. They reveal people with it. The depth does not create the distance. It exposes the distance that was always there. It shows with a precision that surface-level interaction never would, exactly where the other person's capacity ends. And that exposure, that specific moment of clarity about what someone is and is not capable of offering, is not rejection of the empath. It is information about the other person. Accurate, useful, ultimately necessary information. The solution is not to become shallower so more people can reach you. The solution is to stop interpreting other people's limitations as your inadequacy, and to understand that the rarity of being fully met at the depth you carry is not proof that something is wrong with you. It is proof that what you are looking for is real, and rare, and worth continuing to look for, rather than abandoning the search by convincing yourself you were never worthy of finding it. The third belief, the deepest one, the one that has been running longest, the belief that choosing yourself is a form of selfishness. This belief arrived early. In most empaths, it arrived before they had the language to examine it, in the specific texture of an environment where their needs created difficulty, where their wants took up space that was not readily available, where the most effective way to maintain the warmth and stability they needed was to require as little as possible, to be easy, to make their own interior world small enough to fit in the space they were given. And they were good at it, extraordinarily good, because empaths are extraordinarily adaptive, and the adaptation became so efficient, so deeply practiced, that somewhere along the way the original self that had needs and wants and a hunger for more than it was being given stopped feeling like the real self. The real self became the adaptive one, the one that gave without asking, the one that stayed without conditions, the one that absorbed the cost of everyone else's incapacity without ever presenting the bill. And the idea of choosing themselves, of allowing their own needs to be the reason for a decision, of existing in any given moment in a way that prioritized their own interior life over someone else's comfort, did not just feel selfish. It felt like a betrayal of the only version of themselves they had ever been allowed to be. Jung spent his entire career dismantling this belief, not gently, precisely. He proved that the psychology of genuine generosity is not selflessness, it is self-possession. The person who gives from a place of genuine fullness, who offers their presence and their care and their extraordinary capacity for depth because they are actually there, actually resourced, actually present in themselves enough to extend outward. That person gives something entirely different from the person who gives, because they have learned it is the only way to justify their existence. One is generosity, the other is survival dressed as virtue. And Jung said that the empath who has been surviving by disappearing, who has built an entire identity around being the one who needs nothing, is not giving freely. They are performing freely, and the performance, however sincere, however long sustained, is costing them the one thing that genuine giving requires, a self that is actually present, a person who is actually there, not the adaptive version, not the carefully curated offering, but the full, unedited, occasionally inconvenient, stubbornly present reality of a human being who has needs and wants and limits, and a hunger for reciprocity that is not selfishness. It is health. The solution is not to swing from selflessness to selfishness. It is to understand that self-possession, the radical, daily, often uncomfortable practice of actually showing up as yourself rather than as the version of yourself that everyone around you has been most comfortable with, is not the opposite of generosity. It is the prerequisite. You cannot give what you do not have. You cannot be present for others while being absent from yourself. And the version of you that has been giving from absence has been doing something genuinely extraordinary, but it has not been doing something sustainable. And Jung said that sustainable generosity, the kind that does not eventually consume the person offering it, begins with one specific decision. The decision to count yourself among the people who deserve to be cared for. Not after everyone else, not as an afterthought. Alongside them, with the same quality of attention and patience and genuine care that you have always given so freely to everyone except yourself. These three beliefs have been expensive, not in obvious ways, in the accumulated cost of years spent trying to manage the sensitivity that was supposed to be your greatest asset, in the relational cost of a lifetime of interpreting other people's limitations as your inadequacy, in the psychological cost of a self that has been chronically last on the list of people deserving consideration. Jung did not identify these beliefs to give empaths another thing to work on. He identified them because he had watched over and over what happened to his most sensitive patients when they finally stopped holding them, not with dramatic ceremony, not in a single transformative moment, but in the accumulation of small internal revisions, each one a quiet refusal to keep confirming what was never actually true. The sensitivity is not the wound. The depth is not the deficiency. The self is not the last thing worth choosing. These things were never true. They were never true. And the empath who finally lets them stop being true does not become someone new. They become someone finally free of the specific weight of carrying beliefs that were always too heavy, because they were always too wrong, to have been worth carrying in the first place,